Darkstream. Let me repeat, welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. Audio's good, video's good. We've got the unauthorized chat rolling, DLive chat is rolling, and we are in full effect. So, haven't streamed much last couple weeks. There's a good reason for that. Number one, I've been doing a lot of writing. In fact, the SSH book is half done already. And the Sigma Game blog, which is backing it up, is frankly running about 5 times ahead of schedule, in my opinion. It's really been remarkable. I'm very impressed with how Substack managed to essentially sneak a mass mailing system under all the noses of the various tech policemen. But it's a very effective platform, and it's not a surprise that so many people have found it to be so useful and had a lot of success there. And then the other thing is we have successfully transferred all of the information in all of the US servers to the European servers. So everything is now fully duplicated. And what that will allow us to do now is to make some long overdue infrastructural improvements. And so, there's more to it. There's more benefits than just, being able to have redundancy and make the whole system more stable. It also allows you to do things like shut one down, revamp it, and turn it back on again, while the other one is holding up the whole system. So, I understand that unauthorized hasn't changed as much as you might think, given how much effort we've been putting into it. But these infrastructural changes behind the scenes are what make it possible to do things in the future. So, as always, it's taken longer than we'd like, but it's worth it to do it right. So. Anyhow, speaking of Sigma Game and the book, it's been really interesting to see that in their intervening, what has it been, 5-6 years? I don't even know how long it's been since I stopped doing Alpha Game. It's been intriguing and somewhat gratifying to see that the level of interest in these topics is much higher than it's ever been. And more importantly, a lot more people understand the potential and the power of the SSH as an analytical tool. It's really been fantastic to see people getting involved in discussions of it and talking about it in the way that it's intended to be, which is a tool for analyzing and anticipating the behavior of others. One of the things that caused me to lose interest in running Alpha Game, a few years back, was because so many people were so totally obsessed with, what about me? What about me? I mean, I'm working on another book, which I haven't said much about. I don't know when I'll finish it. A lot of people won't like it. If you like the kind of fiction that I write, you probably won't be very interested in this. But I even wrote a poem that provides the pen name of the author, or possibly the title, I haven't decided. And it was inspired by the endless and repetitive interest that people showed primarily in themselves. You know, what about me? What about me? Um, it's kind of funny, and don't get me wrong, I'm just as guilty of this as anybody else. Um, can you imagine how tedious it must be for God? You know, do something for me, do this for me, what about me? Um, I need to contemplate more on that. But, you know, one benefit of the way that the world is just degrading and declining and collapsing on every side is that it's really incredibly clarifying. It really makes you realize what matters and what doesn't matter. You know, I mean, if just, you know, thinking about this kind of stuff, you know, if I could do one thing differently, I think that the thing that I would have done differently is had more children. I saw a picture of a friend of mine from the old Bible study, and you know, just I've seldom envied anyone. You know, people that thought I envied John Scalzi. I mean, that was ludicrous. You know, success, material things. I mean, they're just not really worth very much in the end. And I understand that's easy to say when you have them. It's hard to hear when you don't. But the reality is, it doesn't change whether it's true or not. You know, it is true that the biggest and greatest wealth that you have is your children and your grandchildren, which of course tends to underline what a horrific thing the boomers have done on average, making it clear macro is not micro. There's always exceptions. There's always good people. You know, but the way that they have violated the proverb where it says, you know, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. But it's the children and the children's children that are the most important part. You know, their existence is required for the inheritance things to matter at all. Therefore, they are the first priority. But you know, I look at my friends and acquaintances, and you know, I have to say that my Christian friends have done pretty well. I think, you know, of the vast majority of them that got married, you know, at a reasonable age to have children, I think the smallest number is 3 and the largest number is 10. So you can see why the FBI is tremendously concerned about Christian extremists. They have kids. And, you know, it's really amazing to get these Christmas cards and see these pictures of these, you know, large, beautiful families. You know, but when I look at my secular friends, 2 is about the most that any of them have, and a disturbing number never had any. You know, and these are good people. These are attractive people. These are the kind of genes that would have benefited humanity. but we were taught to prioritize other things. And I'm very, very, what, I had no intention of getting married. I wasn't interested in having kids. I was interested in myself. And the funny thing is that I can't even remember half the things I was prioritizing back then. They're totally forgettable. So much of the stuff, if you're young, if you're in your, early 20s, late teens, so much of the stuff that you prioritize right now, you will not even remember. The girl that you're obsessed with, the guy that you think is the be all and end all. I promise you, 30 years later, you might not even remember their name. And so I think that Big Bear was onto this early. I think that he has been an absolute blessing to not just to the community of bears, but also to the ilk and the dread ilk. In really opening up my eyes to the importance of that. And these are difficult times. The secular people, the materialist people, they say, well, how can you have kids in a world that's full of war? Well, that's how you win. You literally have kids while nobody else is. And I think it's really important for those of us who don't, I shouldn't say those of us, but when I say us, I meant those in our community who don't have children, who can't have children, who are too old, is help the young families. Fakest Moon Landing says, I'm a 41-year-old Christian with no kids because I have psoriasis and am ugly. Wish I had kids bad. Well, first of all, you still can. Okay? Unless, well, let me back up. I'm assuming that you're male. The fact that, anyhow, and maybe I'm wrong, but if you're a man, there's still an opportunity. If you're a woman, well, probably not. But the point is, I'm talking to people like you and to people like me who are older, is the best thing that we can do is help the young families. Find 2 or 3 young Christian families and do something for them. I'm not saying you have to adopt them or say, hey, I'm your new creepy Uncle Joey. But you can do things like, I don't know, maybe if you have what's the best way to put this? I guess what I'd say is look for ways to help. If you see a young couple at your church and hear that they're struggling or they need something or whatever, find a way to help them out. You don't need to tell them it's you. Don't do it for yourself. But I can guarantee that you will find it worthwhile. Because at the end of the day, everybody, no matter what you have, you don't win if you die with the most toys. Everybody leaves the world alone Everybody leaves the world with nothing. So not only, we think a lot about what what can I do as we get older, I should say. Nobody under the age of 50 thinks this way. But those of us who are, and those of us who, see our peers and our heroes and stuff aging out, you know, we have a natural tendency to think, what am I going to do with the time that I have left? I figure that I've got at least, on average, 20 solid years to write. To write good books, to write, stuff that is at more or less the level that I'm writing now. I'm not going to get any better than I am, but I'm probably not going to get much worse for another 20 years. Now, I don't want to sit around and take 7 years to get a Grave of Gods done. It's not going to happen. I can't say that I think that that time has been wasted, because honestly, I think that unauthorized and this community and especially the library and the bindery, I mean, those are probably some of the most important, significant, and satisfying things that I've ever been a part of. I don't regret, if the world lost 2 or 3 books from me but gained the library, the bindery, and so forth. That's a pretty good trade-off, wouldn't you say? I mean, I do. And the funny thing is, I'm no less motivated to get more books out, to write more, despite the fact that everybody said, where's the book? Where's the book? Get the book done. Get the book done. I get the book done, and nobody. I haven't even seen any reviews of it. Now, of course, that's partly our fault. We don't have it on Amazon. We need to do that. We will, and so forth. We got to get the print edition out. We will, and so forth. But it is kind of funny that I literally heard way more about people wanting me to get it done than I have heard of whether people liked it or not. You know what I mean? This is cool. Rainline says, gifted my junior classics to an acquaintance with sons almost old enough this last Christmas. That's fantastic. And that's amazing. And speaking as a book collector, that's painful. But it's one of the best things that you can do, and that's what I mean when I'm saying, just because you can't have kids, just because you can't help out in that way, doesn't mean that you can't help build the future. It doesn't mean that you can't help contribute to the positive future that is going to survive, that is absolutely going to survive by getting through this clown world debacle. Austin says, hoping by 29 to start having kids. We're both approaching 27 and it feels like starting too late. It's not. It's not. That's younger than Space Bunny and I were. I mean, even if you started now, you could pretty easily have as many as 10. Not as likely, obviously. And of course, fate will always play a role. I'm one of 4, but my mother had 4 miscarriages. Seems a little insane to imagine that we could have theoretically been a family of 8, but um, so you never know what fate is going to throw at you, but you have to go in with an open mind, and you have to go in. The one thing that it's just like trying something. The only way to assure that you'll fail is to fail to try. Corbin says, a smart young man said life was a relay race. You're trying to put the next guy in a better position. Exactly. Space Bunny and I were talking today about why the Gen Xers are more bitter about the way the world is now than either the millennials or the Zoomers, despite the fact that they both have it worse than we did and than we do. And what she said, and I agree with her, is that we feel, the two younger generations never had the hope. They never knew the world that we did when we were young. So they lack the sense of betrayal and the sense of shock that we all have. I mean, I think that's something that the two younger generations don't necessarily understand, nor is there any reason they should. But when I look at my friends who are my age, they're all, to a certain extent, traumatized and shell-shocked by this aberrant future in which we found ourselves. I mean, and you can see this not just looking at the videos of the malls in the 1980s or anything like that. If you read the science fiction novels, if you read the books predicting how the future was going to be, that was what we thought was going to happen. That was what we assumed was going to happen. For multiple generations, for generation after generation in the United States, each generation had it better off than before. I remember talking to Space Bunny's great grandmother, and no, it was her grandmother, not her great, but her grandmother, who had 15 children, and she'd seen everything from the time that the first cars were being driven and so forth. And it was really remarkable to get her perspective on things. And if you thought about how things had changed, mostly for the better, not entirely, but mostly, you really expected that things were going to continue. And you can actually see right when it turned, right when it changed. It was when history ended. Cactus Eater Bear says, because we saw how good it was. Yeah, we saw how good it was. Even the 1970s, the stagflation decade that was supposed to be so terrible, was the boomers considered that to be the idyllic period of paradise on earth. Austin says 9/11 was such a huge turning point on American prosperity, so much wasted. That's clearly one point, but things had already perceptibly changed. Right around the time of uh, right around the time of 1991 or so was when we suddenly kind of started to become aware that maybe something wasn't quite right. And then certainly I would say by 1999 and that whole millennial bug, um, it was very clear to everyone that we were not heading in the direction that we thought we were. I've said this before, but I would really encourage uh, younger people to listen to some of that music from that like 1989, um, that like Jesus Jones, Right Here, Right Now, that sort of thing. Um, Scorpions, Winds of Change. I mean, across the genres, there was this legitimate sense of optimism that we had. Um, but we didn't know that the seeds of destruction had already been planted before we were even born. 1965. I've done the math. You've seen it. Almost all of the immigrants who have come in since then have been net negative on the economy. Um, Matt Jarbo says the end of history song. It's talking about watching the world wake up from history. It's about the fall of the Berlin Wall. Um, Sam has a good point. You can see the Gen X disillusion with the reality that they were worse off in movies like Office Space. That's exactly right. What year was Office Space made? Grunge music, yeah. Grunge music was kind of our first alarm bell. like, hang on a second. This isn't right. You know. Um, but and I think that this is one reason why you. Oh, 1999. Yeah, so that was actually pretty late. But the fact that they were making a movie about it by that point meant that it had already penetrated the culture. And I think that this is one reason why you very seldom hear Gen Xers criticizing either millennials or Zoomers. I could be wrong, but I literally never hear any of my friends who are my age complaining about young people in that way. If anything, we tend to feel sorry for them and have a desire to try to help them somehow, which is not the way that the boomers looked at us or you guys. Um, but what do? We don't give up. Here's the thing. As awful as the situation is, it's going to stop. It's going to come to an end. It's going to come crashing down. And we are going to have the opportunity, you are going to have the opportunity to rebuild from a higher point than some point in the past. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be unbelievable challenges that we can't even reasonably predict. But we already know the way. We already know the path. And so, I really encourage you, if you're older Help the young. Give them good advice. Help them materially, even if it's small. You know, you see some young couple pull over to fill up for gas. Pay for their gas. You know, tell them to go. You know, have a go get a decent dinner at a decent restaurant or something. Um, you know, one of the most, I think, important personal development moments for me was when my best friend and I started our computer game company, Fenris Wolf. And we had no idea what we were doing. We'd quit our jobs, sold our cars, had saved up what we thought was plenty of money to give us at least a year and a half to work on the game. But then we needed to hire some people and stuff. And you know, the guys were great. They took like the absolute minimum that they could afford to get paid because they really wanted to work on games. And we set to work, and we worked out a deal with Creative Labs. I knew the people at Creative Labs. The Michael House had come from S3, which was a competitor to the company we'd come from, and he'd signed us to write the Rebel Moon demo. And we worked out a deal, and it was a bundling deal. So we were going to get paid $75,000 to develop. We asked for $75,000 to develop it, and then we also were going to get like 75 cents for every copy they shipped with the boards beyond a certain point. They didn't ship that many boards, unfortunately, so we never made any extra money off of that. But what was significant was I sent the proposed contract off, and they sent it back with a few changes, including they changed the amount they were going to pay us from $75,000 to $150,000. I'm looking at this, and I said to my partner, I said, do you think they made a mistake? And one of the artists was like, what are you doing? Sign it quick, you know? And so we were like, okay. I said, no, we, you know, he's a good guy. If they made a mistake, we have to tell him. So I call him up. I said, hey, I'm not sure I understand how this negotiating thing works. If I come back with 50,000, are you going to offer us like 300? And he started laughing, and he said, no, but I know you guys are just starting out. I know that you know, you probably calculated the bare minimum that you need, but you really need to ask for more than that. You know, you don't know that it's going to make any additional money. And as it happens, he was right, we didn't. He said, I want to make sure that you guys get paid properly for your time. I know how much time you guys are going to put into this. So, so it's not a mistake. Sign it at the 150. And I said, well, first, thank you. I said, I don't even know what to say. And he said, you don't have to say anything. He said, first of all, you're welcome. And the only way that you can repay me is do it for somebody else. Find a way to do it for someone else. And, you know, since that time, you know, I've always made it a point to look for win-win situations with our partners. I think that if you talk to anyone that we've worked with, you know, whether they we're totally happy with how the outcome was or not, you very seldom find people that wouldn't work with us again, or you know didn't like how things went, etc., etc. Because we always try to set things up in a way that if somebody wins, everybody wins, which necessarily involves looking out for the interests of others, even at the expense of yourself. It's always interesting talking to some author that hasn't worked with us before. You know, we're like, they're like, so what's the arrangement? I said, 50-50. They're like, well, for ebooks, right? I'm like, and for print. They're like, really? You know, unfortunately, Amazon's destroyed the book system, so so that business is struggling. I mean, not ours, but most publishing businesses are really struggling right now. Vox, do you think the American South is a safer place to position oneself versus California? I think everywhere is a better place to position oneself versus California, with the possible exception of the East Coast. Obviously, it depends where in the American South. You probably don't want to live in an area that's likely to be governed by a Mexican cartel in the next 10, 15 years. But yes, in short, the answer is yes. Also, I should mention, Yordamon says the Sigma Game Telegram channel is now live here, and he gives the address. I will paste that into the DLive chat for those who are interested. That will let you subscribe to the posts there via Telegram if you like. Although obviously we would encourage you to subscribe to the email system there as well if you get a chance. It's free. Even if we do eventually go to turn on the paid side, it's not my intention to paywall any posts. Sunlight says, Vox, any possibility that you'd explain how Amazon destroyed the bookmaking system on a stream? I already did. And just go to the blog. All of the details are there on the blog. You can see it all there. In fact, what's really interesting is I was reading, I read 2 of Larry Correa's Monster Hunter books recently, Nemesis and Vendetta. And then I started reading the latest Monster Hunter Memoirs book. And what really struck me is that, first of all, the 2 Monster Hunter Nation books that I read, or just regular Monster Hunter books, were really good. Really very good. I love what he did with Franks, Agent Franks. And even the new book is quite good. I mean, there's some, very cringy, there's the conservative Judeo-Christian IDF worship stuff that's a little bit embarrassing in this, in light of the Gaza cost and other, shall we say, military infelicities there. But it's a good book. It's a solid book. And the fact that a book by such a popular author is doing relatively poorly vis-a-vis the AI pushed books, all the Kindle Unlimited books being pushed, is just a really, really bad sign. So, have you discussed publishing any of Stefan's books? Yeah, we were supposed to publish a book of his a long time ago, but it was a really long book. It needed a lot of editing, and after 2 years of me not getting the editing done, Stefan just said, look, I just want to publish it myself, which was totally reasonable. I think, I'm not certain because I don't know, but I provided him with the version that I'd edited. I don't know whether he used any of my edits at all or not. Um, I mean, if he did, he was welcome to them. But that was pretty much one that I screwed up. I mean, we probably should have been publishing his books. Um, but other than that one, no, I haven't read any of them. Uh, he was a decent writer. It was a um, his books were not really genre books either. That was the thing, is he was a little bit of a eclectic fit at the time, and so it wasn't the high priority for us than it should have been. But you should see a lot more books coming out, regular books coming out from us soon. We have a new editor, and they have just finished preparing all three of the Eternal Warriors books, so we're going to get those back in print. All three of the War Dogs books. Um, the Martynov book is now prepped for library, and so I think you'll see in the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to be surprised at how many books are coming out of Castalia, both library, history, and house. So, just kind of like the way we've been focusing on the infrastructure of unauthorized, we've been focused on the production side of Castalia, and we're going to get caught up. Right now we're like a year and 2 months behind on library. We're going to get caught up. In fact, it's a good time to point this out. Just got this today, this afternoon. What that is the very successful stamp test of Castalia History Book 3, Cambridge Medieval History Volume 2, the 12th Century to the Renaissance. And honestly, these books are going to be spectacular, in my opinion. Those are not the actual bound books, those are just the two stamped cases, but imagine how those are going to look on your library if you're a subscriber. And they will be, if we're at this point, this means I think they're scheduled to start going out on the 16th or so. They're supposed to come to us on the 16th. We should be getting them shipped. They should be shipping out from our warehouses before the end of the month. Seven sends a super chat. I think he's trying to practice a little bit of a Pavlovian exercise here. He sends a generous super chat. Says, Vox, thanks for streaming tonight. You're quite welcome. I need to be doing more, and I should be able to do quite a bit more in February than I did in January. Especially we need to do the big Taiwan invasion one, which I'm already preparing the stuff for, the graphics and so forth. Anyhow, these are Q1882 joins the incentivization crowd. Thank you. Enjoyed this stream. Thanks, Vox. You're welcome. And this stream is going to be up. It is going to be uploaded. User O2A7BF74, that's not a mouthful, says, Vox, thanks for the hopeful streams. Much appreciated. Could you please upload this stream? Yeah, I'm going to upload at least 2 of them tonight. This one will probably get uploaded tomorrow. Just because, actually, now that we don't have that, Anthony's jumping into. Thank you, Anthony. He sends a super chat saying, streaming, Somebody's got kids. Anyhow, Silent Draco says both volumes look splendid. They do indeed. They do indeed. I had nothing to say, but it won't let me super chat with a message. But you did. It's not. I mean, just letting me know that you enjoyed the stream is useful information. By the way, something that I can pretty much tell you that you're going to really enjoy when the SSH book comes out is Owen sent me a couple paragraphs on the Bravo experience of having a sigma in the place of an alpha. And as is Owen's style, he pulls no punches. Just to be clear, I told him to write exactly what he thinks without holding anything back. And it is not indicative of any sort of split, problem, argument, change in our relationship. To the contrary, it actually gives you a accurate image of what our relationship is actually like, which is to say, somewhat frustrating for Owen. Frustrating and occasionally irritating. But I really appreciated that, because the whole point of the book is to set it in reality, to build this very, very strong foundation in truth, so that it gives anyone who reads and understands the concepts better tools for human interaction, which, you know, possibly illustrates part of the problem, because if you're someone who is building tools for improved human interaction, just that statement alone tends to strongly hint at the fact that maybe you're not particularly good at it naturally. It is what it is. But it's I was really pleased when I read it, despite the fact that it is not particularly flattering, shall we say, because it's true and because it's real. And because it's true and because it's real, it is useful. It's meaningful. And that's, what I want the book to be. I absolutely hope it's not my magnum opus. But I do think that it's probably going to be my best-selling book so far, and it's going to be something that is going to be extremely useful, even more useful than SJWs and corporate cancer were for people who understood them and took the trouble to apply them. It was kind of interesting. I was talking to one of the devs today, and we were thinking about the fact that Ben Shapiro has the #1 song in America, which nobody knows and nobody will remember in 2 weeks. Cactus Cedar Bear says BB's comments would be a funny prologue. No, they wouldn't. That's the thing. People don't realize how serious Owen can be. He is funny. There are funny aspects to what he writes, but like I said, it's real to the point that some people will probably be concerned about the fact, is there a rift between Vox and Owen? There isn't. Not literally nothing has changed at all, but it does explain in a few short paragraphs. It does explain in a very succinct manner how difficult it can be putting up with a sigma over time. Will the SSH book help the reader determine his own type or status? Absolutely. We will have the SSH self-test as its own appendix in the back, in the very, very unlikely hope that it will reduce the number of people saying, "What about me? What about me?" I don't actually believe it'll help at all, but it's worth a shot. Rainline says, on Sigma Rarity, don't think I've ever known one. It's a very good chance you haven't. I mean, when I think about the Sigmas that I've known, looking back in my past, I cannot think of anyone from high school in my class. There's one or two possibilities above me, um, but in my entire university, I can think of two. You know, it was interesting when I was writing the chapter on Sigmas. It was really interesting because I realized that the two of them really symbolize two very different but important aspects of a Sigma profile. And the first one really kind of exemplified the cool, aloof side, the totally detached side. And then the other one really represented the total disrespect for the hierarchy and the social rules. And it was kind of remarkable because, I mean, this was one of my best friends at university, somebody that I spent a lot of time with. But in retrospect, it's kind of hilarious to realize, wow, he really was kind of a dick to everybody. I mean, not to me directly, but even, like, it was even a little strange. We go to Tokyo together, and we spend a lot of time together for like the first month and a half, maybe. But then once we discover Roppongi, like, we just both go our separate ways. We would still see each other um, at class occasionally. We still talk. We're still on perfectly good terms. But a lot of the stuff that I did in Japan had nothing to do with him, and we had gone together. So it's kind of funny. It's like a bad Hollywood movie with terrible military tactics. Like, I mean, kind of like the Jack Reacher thing. It's kind of funny how they're such an effective team, and the minute that they get into any sort of situation, they completely split up so that the director can have everybody give them their mano a mano one-on-one fight, right? Um, two Sigmas go off and promptly split up and don't communicate at all. It's crazy. Um, Kajia says, my best friend is a Sigma, I'm Delta. SSH helps so much putting our whole history in perspective. It really does, doesn't it? Q1882 says, communicating to a plus 2 SD IQ Sigma leader with two thumbs is sometimes tough. Haha. Don't we all have two thumbs? I'm not sure what that even means. Carnaby says, the Sigma in my middle school was super low key, but got the hot girl and won the fight of the year against the school bully. That sounds about right. I mean, it's interesting that you could identify one that young, because I do think that a lot of Sigmas tend to be more on the late-ish bloomer side, which I think is one reason why even though they might have some alpha capabilities, they don't develop enough of them. So, but it's been a really interesting experience looking back at my own personal history from an SSH perspective, and realizing that there was a really good, perfectly justifiable reason that a lot of people didn't like me. You know, they shouldn't have. I mean, it wasn't like I was offended. Um, Q1882 says, I meant you're the leader who is speaking on stream. Um, yeah, about that. Um, you need to bump that plus 2 SD up a bit. Um, anyhow, I don't take any offense. I just think it's funny. Um, but when you look at the how important the hierarchy is to people, and how the hierarchy and this forms the rules and the expectations, it's no wonder that all the bravos are just offended by you. Because I was always, again, I didn't get upset or anything. I mean, maybe it maybe it tended to boost my feelings of superiority. You know, I mean, unlike unlike the great unwashed, I judge people on the content of their character and behavior, not just because not at, I don't hate anyone at first sight. Well, yeah, because you're thinking, well, these people hate me, and I've never done anything to them, except you have. You've completely rejected one of the most important influences in their lives. You're showing no respect whatsoever for the structure that pretty much dictates most of their daily experience. It's essentially the equivalent of just, you know, blindly walking up to, you know, a fraternity house and urinating on it, and then the fraternity brothers get mad at you, and you're like, "What? I didn't do anything to you. I just pissed on this building. What are you upset about?" You know. Sam Freeman says, "Is parental rejection distance a common trait of Sigma development?" I couldn't say. I don't think that I don't think I've talked to enough Sigmas or known enough to have any clue. What I can say is that there does seem to be some natural tendency toward it. My mother told me that I was the strangest, most standoffish baby that she or anyone else had ever seen. There's actually a picture. I should see if I could find it, dig it up here, and show it on the stream one time. I mean, it's my mother, and she's holding me, and I mean, we're talking like weeks old, right? And I, and she had said, she said it was really weird. You used to like look at us with like, who are you and what are you up to? She's like, some babies are sweet and some babies are demanding, and some babies are fussy. And she goes, "You're the only baby I've ever heard described as suspicious." You know, and so, um, it's just so maybe there is a natural tendency toward it. I don't know. It's hard to say, and I don't, even the Sigmas that I've known, with whom I've been friends, and actually this is probably typical. Um, I don't know anything about their parents or their relationship with their parents. They don't know anything about mine. We never talked about it. Why would you? You know? Carnaby says, my relative said I was the best baby ever. My mother was worried that I was retarded. Well, if you're that friendly, you know, I mean, people who are that friendly and open and good so often come off as not real bright. Just like that they don't notice. Kontiki said, would you like to interview other Sigmas? Absolutely hell no. Um, I assume, just so you know, just to be clear, um, most of the people who email me to explain to me that they're a fellow Sigma and we're just alike and stuff, um, they they send pretty strong indications that they're gammas. Um, Now I'm sure that they're, given that we're dealing with thousands of people here, I'm sure that there's a couple people who think they are Sigmas who actually are. But you know, I'm don't I generally hello fellow Sigma exactly. I just really don't trust the average individual's ability to uh, analyze himself. Um, was men going their own way a Sigma psyop? Zero chance. And nothing to do with Sigmas. Um, Sigmas deciding they want nothing to do with women doesn't happen. Alpha's not going to fall for it either. Perhaps Putin if the opportunity. Yeah, I mean Putin. Obviously, I'd love to interview Putin. I'd love to interview Xi. Who wouldn't? I think it'd be great if Tucker Carlson actually does interview him. I think it could be really massively informative to the American public to realize that this guy not only is not a monster, but he's actually a highly intelligent, extraordinarily successful politician. Silent Draco says, last thing a Sigma would do because Sigma. Um, Probably true. I mean, I'm theoretically interested just because it would be good to know more to be able to build more data. But honestly, I think that's for someone else to do. Um, the Jordan one said, try to get a Sigma to sit still for an interview, then try to get another one to sit still long enough to interview him. Yeah. Um, yeah. The devs don't find, the thing is, I mean, I know Owen talks about, how Sigmas are difficult for Bravos and stuff, but, the devs, they love the way that Sigmas handle things. They love having a Sigma in charge of things. Um, they just think it's fantastic with all the lack of direction and the not paying attention to details and going off and starting new projects without telling anyone. And I mean, it's I I think that the collective uh, team of unauthorized and Castalia House could probably write an entire book entitled "This is what's wrong with Sigmas and why you should never work for one." You know, it's all it's all just so efficient and freeing. Yeah. Well, I must be doing a decent job. He hasn't talked to me in a month. It's kind of funny how people just like it is kind of funny how uh, I think that being a Sigma helps you understand the fundamental flaws in the golden rule. You know, um, Sigmas are really, really bad at the concept of, I mean, it's a bad thing to teach them, do unto others as you would have them do to yourself. You're like, hey, I left him alone and I didn't talk to him at all. And they're like, why is he ignoring me? Does he hate me? Am I going to get fired? You know, it's like the disconnect is it can be comical. Carnaby says, Sigma Boss would be awesome if you were given a mandate and a budget to work everything out yourself. Micromanagement sucks. Well, yeah, you don't have to worry about micromanagement. I mean, great, you know. But, you know, it's, you know, alphas are better. Sam Freeman has a good, he says, a murder of crows, a riot of otters, a suspicion of sigmas. That's not bad. It's not bad. Anyhow, well, I'm going to wrap this up. So thanks so much for tuning in. I repeat, there is now a Sigma Game Telegram channel that you can subscribe to. It'll kick out, it should kick out the posts onto Gab, which will be cool. If you haven't visited it yet, I'd encourage you to do so just because, frankly, it's pretty comical. And there's the real A Throne of Bones 3 title, A Suspicion of Sigmas. Yeah, I think we'll stick with the Grave of Gods. But all right. Well, thanks so much. Have a good evening. I'm Vox Day, and this is known as the Darkstream.